Video parande to like, share, or subscribe Zara Karain, Chali Kahani Shuru Kartain. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just another tired traveler at the dusty interstellar terminal outside New Jakarta, standing in line and waiting for a shuttle back to Earth. The air smelled of oil and ozone, the kind of scent that clung to places where ships came and went too often. Neon signs flickered in half a dozen languages, and the crowd shuffled forward impatiently, each person lost in their own worries. That's when I noticed him. He stood just ahead of me in line, an alien, frail and hunched, with skin that looked like paper stretched too thin, his movements trembling and uncertain. He fumbled with a worn data stick at the ticket console, his clawed fingers shaking so badly he could barely touch the screen. The system rejected him again and again, flashing red. Behind him, voices grew irritated, mutters of frustration spreading through the line. No one stepped forward. No one offered to help. I don't know why it hit me the way it did. Maybe it was the way he looked, lost, helpless, like he had already been abandoned too many times. Maybe it was the way people looked right through him, as if he were invisible. My mom used to tell me, if you see someone falling, and you can help, you don't think twice. So I stepped forward. Need a hand, old-timer? I asked. He turned, and his eyes, cloudy and dim, met mine. His voice was frail, barely above a whisper. They will not let me board. I cannot afford the fare. Before I could think, I swiped my own credits across the scanner. The system chimed approval. A ripple of disapproval spread through the line, mutters about a human wasting money on an alien. I ignored them. The old alien's eyes welled with something deep, something heavy. He bowed slightly, whispering words I couldn't understand. And then the world changed. The ground trembled. A shadow fell across the terminal as 3 massive warships broke through the clouds, engines roaring like thunder. The crowd panicked. Alarms blared. Soldiers rushed to position. The warships descended like predators from the heavens, their black hulls glinting with eerie symbols that seemed older than the stars themselves. The sky cracked open with thunder as they pierced through the clouds, engines growling, leaving trails of fire in their wake. Panic erupted instantly. People screamed, scattering across the terminal. Vendors abandoned their stalls, children cried, and security officers shouted orders that no one obeyed. I stood frozen, caught between awe and terror, as the massive vessels settled onto the landing platforms. Their sheer size dwarfed everything around them, each one bristling with weaponry that could turn a city into dust. The ground shook as rampways extended, metallic claws locking into place. And then the soldiers emerged, lines of tall, armored figures with weapons slung across their chests, their movements synchronized, disciplined, terrifying. But they didn't aim their weapons at the crowd. They didn't bark threats or push anyone aside. Instead, their eyes fixed on the alien standing beside me, the frail one I had just helped. And then, impossibly, they dropped to one knee. Every single soldier. A synchronized gesture of respect that made the terminal fall silent. Even the alarms seemed distant, drowned by the weight of that moment. I turned toward the alien, and my breath caught in my throat. He was no longer hunched, no longer frail. His back straightened, his eyes glowing faintly with an inner fire. The trembling old man had vanished, and in his place stood someone regal, commanding, dangerous. He looked at me with a calm that carried centuries. His voice was steady now, ringing with authority. You gave me dignity when all others turned away. Few would have dared. Fewer still would have done so without knowing who I am. I swallowed hard. Who are you? His lips curved into something between gratitude and warning. I am Kaildar, sovereign of the Diravari Dominion, emperor in exile. And now, human, you have bound yourself to my fate. The crowd had thinned, but whispers lingered like smoke, spreading through every corner of the terminal. People spoke my name without knowing it, pointing at me as if I had somehow become part of the spectacle. Soldiers in black armor flanked me on either side as the alien, no, the emperor, guided me up the ramp of his flagship. My legs felt heavy, each step pulling me further away from the life I knew and deeper into something I didn't understand. Inside, the ship was nothing like the rust-stained terminals of Earth. Its corridors gleamed with polished alloy, lit by streams of pale blue energy running along the walls. Every surface bore the mark of the Diravari, curved symbols etched into steel, banners that fluttered without wind, glowing like they were alive. Soldiers stood rigid at attention as we passed, their eyes flicking between their emperor and the strange human walking at his side. We entered his private chamber, a vast hall filled with relics that looked older than my entire species. Kaildar motioned for me to sit, though my legs barely obeyed. When he finally spoke, his words carried both weight and sorrow. My people betrayed me. I was cast out by my own blood, stripped of my throne, hunted by assassins who once swore loyalty. He lifted his head, eyes burning with quiet rage. For years I wandered, nameless, powerless, forgotten. Yet you, an outsider, with nothing to gain, showed me dignity when even my kind would not. I wanted to tell him it was nothing. Just a simple ticket, a gesture of decency. But the way he looked at me told me this was no small thing to him. Kaeldar leaned closer, his voice low but steady. I will not forget. The Diravari do not forget. My life is yours to command. And in that moment, I realized my small act of kindness had placed me at the center of an empire's broken crown. The ship jolted violently, lights flickering as the first wave of enemy fire slammed into the shields. Sirens wailed across the corridors, and the calm order of the flagship turned instantly into chaos. I staggered, bracing against the bulkhead as officers barked commands in a sharp, guttural language. Through the viewport, the blackness of space came alive with streaks of light, plasma fire, torpedoes, interceptors darting like wasps. Kaeldar remained steady, unflinching, his presence like an anchor in the storm. His commander, a tall, broad-shouldered alien with skin like burnished metal, snarled as he scanned the tactical display. The usurpers have tracked you, my lord. They will not allow you to flee alive. His eyes shifted to me, cold and sharp. Nor the human who stands at your side. The implication struck like a blow. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. By helping Kaeldar, I had been marked. They saw me as part of him, part of the problem, maybe even part of the threat. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to meet that commander's gaze. Kaeldar raised a hand, silencing the tension. He turned to me, his voice calm despite the tremors shaking the ship. You have a choice, human. I can set you down on a neutral station. You can walk away and never look back. Forget all of this. His expression hardened. But if you stay, you will be stepping into a war older than your people's stars. And once you choose, there is no return. Another blast rocked the ship, the floor shuddering beneath us. Fighters screamed past the viewport, fire lancing toward them. My heart pounded, but beneath the fear was something stubborn. I clenched my fists and forced the words out. I didn't pay for your ticket just to abandon you halfway. So tell me, what's the plan? Kaeldar's lips curved into a grim smile, his eyes blazing. Then prepare yourself, human. Tonight, you fight beside an emperor. What followed was a blur of days that felt like weeks. We jumped from system to system, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to catch us. Every time we thought we'd shaken pursuit, another ambush would spring from the shadows of an asteroid belt, or a mercenary band would sell our location to the highest bidder. I had never imagined living on the run across the stars, but that became my new reality. Yet within the chaos, I began to see pieces of something larger. Kaeldar wasn't just a dethroned ruler clinging to pride. Everywhere we went, we found signs of loyalty buried like embers waiting to be stirred. Abandoned outposts lit up as soon as his codes were transmitted. Merchant captains, grizzled and world-weary, dropped to one knee when they saw his face. Whole crews of soldiers in exile pledged their blades again without hesitation. And somehow, each time, their eyes drifted toward me. At first I thought it was suspicion, this strange human at their emperor's side. But soon I realized it was something else. They saw me as the one who stood with him when no one else would. A symbol of faith, however small. It was absurd. I wasn't a soldier, wasn't trained for diplomacy. I was just a man who once worked cargo haulers on the lunar docks. Yet Kaeldar began to introduce me as his human advocate, a bridge between our species. He carries no blade, no title, Kaeldar would say, but he carries honor. Slowly, I stopped protesting. Maybe I wasn't a leader, but I couldn't deny what was happening. The usurpers were growing bold, gathering their fleets. War was coming, inevitable and vast. And Earth, my Earth, was now caught in the shadow of it. The war came like a storm breaking across the galaxy. It began with scattered skirmishes, patrol ships clashing in empty space, scouts vanishing into silence, but soon it grew into something far greater. By the time Kaeldar's banners were raised openly, the usurpers had unleashed their full fury. Hundreds of ships surged across the void, fleets clashing in arcs of fire that painted entire star systems red. From the bridge of the Eternal Flame I saw battles unfold that no human imagination could have prepared me for. Moons shattered under concentrated bombardments, their debris fields becoming weapons themselves. Planetary shields flared, cracked, and died as city-sized cannons rained destruction from orbit. The sound of it was felt more than heard, vibrations that crawled up through the ship's hull, rattling bones and teeth. Kaeldar stood at the center of it all, issuing commands with the calm authority of someone who had worn a crown his entire life. But even emperors bleed. His fleets faltered, pressed on all sides. For every loyalist that rose from exile, 3 more ships flew the usurper's colors. Despair seeped through the command deck like smoke. I wasn't a tactician, but I remembered something my father told me back on Earth. You don't always have to win, you just have to make the other guy realize you'll never quit. I leaned toward Kaeldar. Don't show them weakness. Show them you'll fight until nothing is left, until the last hull burns and the last breath leaves your body. Make them fear your resolve more than your weapons. His gaze locked with mine, then hardened with fire. He relayed my words, his voice carrying across every channel. And somehow, against all odds, the usurpers faltered. Doubt spread through their ranks. Then came panic. The tide had turned. For the first time, I believed we could win. When the last guns fell silent, the stars themselves seemed to breathe again. Wreckage drifted through the void like grave markers, ships torn open and burning as if the galaxy itself mourned the cost of victory. Kaeldar stood upon the command deck, not triumphant in arrogance but weary, as though the weight of centuries pressed heavier than ever upon his shoulders. His empire was not fully restored, the fractures ran too deep, the betrayals too fresh, but he was alive, and his enemies lay broken. That, for now, was enough. As for me, I was offered things beyond imagining. Wealth enough to buy whole colonies. Titles that would have carved my name into their histories. Even the command of fleets, if I wanted them. But I turned them all down. Those weren't why I'd stepped forward that day in the terminal. I hadn't swiped my credits for power or glory. I'd done it because someone needed help. That was all. But Kaeldar refused to let the moment fade into nothing. He stood before his people and told my story, not as a transaction, but as a legend. To him, I was proof that humanity was not merely another warlike species clawing its way into the stars. We were something different, something rare. We helped when there was no profit, no promise, no reason but kindness itself. They began calling me the human who paid the fare star. It sounded absurd the first time I heard it, yet across the Diravari, the name carried weight. To them, I was a reminder that loyalty, dignity, and compassion could still matter in a galaxy drowning in power and betrayal. And sometimes, when I look up at the stars, I wonder how many empires might have been changed, how many wars might have been prevented, by something as small as paying for a stranger's ticket.